Welcome to the February 2025 issue of Rural Builder magazine. This podcast issue is sponsored by Janus International Group, www.janusintl.com. You can jump ahead to any article you'd like with our chapter selection below or listen to the broadcast in full.
You don't have to go to college to be somebody. Commit to something bigger. Put in some elbow grease and take pride in your life. Authored by Linda Schmid. Growing up in Long Island, New York, Aaron Patty was exposed to the trades via his dad, who was a master electrician and member of the Local 3 union in New York City, but he never seriously considered entering the trades. Even when he worked with him in his high school summer years, he didn't consider becoming an electrician. After all, everyone knew that in order to be somebody, you had to go to college. His brother went to medical school and became a doctor. His sister, a teacher, spent 8 years in college. Aaron's mother wanted him to go to college, and teachers encouraged kids to plan on college so they could enjoy a satisfying and prosperous career. Aaron, however, was becoming disenchanted with school. He had done well, and even enjoyed it up to the last couple of years when he found that he did not enjoy classes such as trigonometry, which wasn't easy, and besides, how was he going to need this in the real world, anyway? So, with mixed feelings, he signed up for community college, and a year in, he met the girl he knew he wanted to marry. In the meantime, he had started working for his uncle installing solar systems. When Aaron and his fiancée decided to move to Minnesota where she grew up, they decided to make some career changes. She started her own cleaning business while he entered trade school, Northwest Technical College, NTC, to become more rounded. Trade school and scholarships. While he was one of the older people in class, he found he bonded with his classmates and appreciated the help of his teachers. There were lectures and classroom work, and they were helpful, but Aaron loved the hands-on experience. Hands-on class experience is a great way to get safe training. It is the best place to make mistakes that you can learn from. If something goes boom, you're in a controlled, safe environment and not in a customer's home, Aaron said. NTC Trade School kept students apprised of scholarship opportunities. Aaron had grown up watching Dirty Jobs, but he thought, what is the likelihood that I will be one of the lucky few who wins a MikeroweWorks Foundation scholarship? But he applied anyway. He liked the pitch. Others offer scholarships saying, we might give you some money, Aaron said. The MikeroweWorks Foundation people said, we might give you some money, but you are committing to something bigger than that. You are agreeing to getting down and dirty, putting some elbow grease in, and taking pride in your life. I liked that. I committed. When he and his wife had moved, Aaron left a great job in New York and went to no job in Minnesota. So between that and the brand new cleaning business, money was not plentiful, and scholarship money was greatly prized. Receiving the scholarship was a huge encouragement. It felt like God wanted me to do this, Aaron said. Working experience. When Aaron left the school with a 2-year degree, he was eligible to take the journeyman electrician test. This is not the only route to a journeyman certification. A candidate can do a 4-year apprenticeship, but Aaron encourages anyone interested in becoming an electrician to start with trade school. He believes in the education, and it helps you reach your goal faster. After working in the field for a year, Aaron was ready. He took the master electrician test and became certified. Then he started his own company, AP Electric. In January 2021, NTC reached out to him and asked him to take over for a teacher who needed to take some time off. He accepted. Aaron greatly enjoyed teaching for a few semesters, even writing his own curriculum and exams. However, once the original teacher was able to return, the job was over. Under normal circumstances, 5 years of experience as a master technician is needed to teach. Making the most of his journey, Aaron has written a book to share his knowledge with those who come behind him, a comprehensive guide to passing the electrical licensing exam. Aaron said, the licensing exam is very hard. The exam is not about field work. It's about the code book, which is hard to read and understand. My book shows you how to navigate it, he added. For every 5 electricians that retire, 2 people opt to become electricians. Then the question is, are they certified electricians? This is important because it is required that every apprentice is supervised by a journeyman or master electrician, so more licensed electricians are needed. Being an electrician provides a great career and great money, Aaron said. I love being an electrician. It is very satisfying, Aaron said. There is a real need in every area. I don't even have to advertise. It is very satisfying because troubleshooting is like figuring out a puzzle, and I am helping people. Sometimes people are so happy because there hasn't been anyone around to help them for a while. Also, the money is good. People charge around $120 per hour in the nearest city. I don't charge that much. I don't need it, Aaron added. He does mostly residential electric. He prefers it because it is more personal. His company has one work van, and he operates debt-free. Aaron wants to continue to grow his business organically and remain debt-free. Someday, he would like to employ electricians and help them grow in skills and experience so they can become journeyman electricians, even master electricians. Most of all, he is passionate about serving the needs of the people in the local community, switching on the light for young people. How can we get the word out to young people about the opportunities available to them as electricians and other trades work? Aaron said, we need to go where the kids are. TikTok. He said that kids spend a lot of time on TikTok, so if someone wanted to reach out to kids and tell them what kind of money they could be making without going to 4 years of school, that would be the forum. As a result of a collaboration with MikeroweWorks Foundation, www.mikeroweworks.org, Rural Builder is featuring profiles of work ethic scholarship recipients in each of its issues. Over 2,000 scholarships have been awarded to trade school students who value hard work and taking personal responsibility. Rural Builder applauds these students and wants to acknowledge their choice to apply their talents to skilled trades. Thank you, MikeroweWorks Foundation, for your continuing efforts to close the skills gap and reconnect the average American with the value of a skilled workforce. Not Your Father's Machine Shed, authored by Dan Brownell. How agricultural buildings have evolved. In 1988, General Motors introduced the iconic ad slogan, "This is not your father's Oldsmobile," to convey to potential customers that its Oldsmobile line had greatly improved over the years to encourage them to take a fresh look at their cars. A similar slogan, "This is not your father's machine shed," is fitting for modern agricultural buildings, which have also undergone a major evolution. But unlike Oldsmobile, which ceased production in 2004 after 106 years, the need for new farm buildings is still great. America's demand for food has risen due to growth in population and exports, but as farmers' profits have been squeezed, they've been forced to become more efficient, increasing production with less labor and lower costs. This, in turn, has led to changes in the design of ag buildings and the materials used to build them. The transformation in farm buildings has been driven by many factors, such as changing demographics, the impact of cultural and environmental influences, skyrocketing farm costs, increasing pressure in domestic and international economics, incorporation of technology, the evolution of livestock management practices, and updated construction techniques and improved building materials. Demographic changes in the general population and on the farm. The average age of the general American population has been increasing for decades, and that upward trend holds for American farmers as well. AgUpdate.com reported that, based on data in the 2022 Census of Agriculture, the average age of U.S. farmer is now 58.1, which is 9.4 years older than in the 1945 census. Over the years, farm building layout and design has been improved to streamline workflows. This includes better site planning and ergonomic efficiencies to reduce wasted time and effort, which helps farmers of all ages, but is especially helpful to those who are older because they tend to tire faster and injure more easily. In addition, features that reduce work and strain and create more ergonomic work environments have been introduced in farm buildings, such as better lighting, remote openers for overhead doors, markings on floors to guide vehicles into parking spots, and non-slip and anti-fatigue floor mats. New and remodeled farm homes include accommodations such as ramps instead of stairs, wider doors, walk-in tubs and showers, and lever-style door handles rather than twist doorknobs to help farmers age in place, so after they retire, they won't need to go to a nursing home, which can be both inconvenient and extremely expensive. The U.S. is experiencing a labor shortage nationally, and especially in rural areas because of lower population density and the movement of the younger generation from rural to urban areas. In farm families, the reluctance of younger generations to follow in their parents' footsteps and take over the farm is another contributing factor. With fewer workers available, farm building designs that improve workflow and efficiencies are even more critical. Environmental and cultural influences. Farm structures are now being designed with more emphasis on energy conservation, using solar panels, wind turbines, LED lighting, geothermal energy, and high-performance insulation such as spray foam and foam boards. Careful site planning is done to orient buildings to take advantage of natural lighting, airflow, and ventilation. In addition, automated environmental controls monitor and adjust temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels to reduce fluctuations, improve performance, and maximize energy efficiency. Buildings are constructed using recyclable materials like steel and sustainably sourced wood. Rooftop rainwater harvesting systems and improved wastewater management systems conserve water, which is especially helpful in drought-vulnerable areas. And as Brett Bulow of wickbuildings.com pointed out, in many areas, state DNR and national EPA regulations place limitations and requirements on water runoff and livestock waste management, which will impact building design and use. Modern farming trends affect building designs in other ways too. According to the USDA's definition, free-range animal farming requires that structures provide animals with free access to the outdoors at least 50% of the day. Farm-to-table and locavore movements have led to an increase in farm stores like Feltz's Dairy Store in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, a retail store located on a family farm that offers a wide variety of dairy products, meat, and produce grown on its own land. The store's website, dairystore.com, explains that the store features viewing windows into the robot barn that allow visitors to observe the cows being milked while enjoying an ice cream cone or some delicious fresh cheese curds. A viewing window is also featured into the cheese plant where visitors can view fresh cheese being made at certain times during the week. The store offers its visitors farm tours and hay rides as well. This interaction with the public on farms is known as agritourism, in which specially designed and equipped buildings host visitors who want to learn more about how farms operate. They cater to school field trips and provide interactive exhibits, educational events, multi-purpose event spaces, and more. Because these facilities are open to the public, they must comply with state and local food handling regulations and federal ADA regulations regarding wheelchair access, restrooms, and more. New trends in agriculture include vertical and indoor farming with precisely regulated climate control. These controlled environment agriculture (CEA) facilities grow produce using hydroponics, aeroponics, and LED lighting to maximize plant growth. This type of farming is economically suited best to urban areas because of their lack of farm acreage, denser population, and higher incomes that can more readily absorb higher produce prices. Increasing pressure in domestic and international economics. Skyrocketing farm costs have forced livestock producers to be more efficient with building space, leading to much larger structures and more compact housing of animals. This is known by various terms, such as intensive animal farming, concentrated animal feeding operations, CAFOs, macro farms, megafarms, and factory farms. They typically use steel-frame structures and can have clear spans of up to 300 feet, far wider than wood post-frame buildings. In large intensive farm operations, biosecurity is especially important to prevent the spread of animal diseases such as swine fever and avian flu. This requires restricted access areas, quarantine zones, sanitation stations, and controlled ventilation to reduce cross-contamination. These giant farms produce large amounts of animal waste, that is often handled using specially designed structures for processing and storage, and some are used for composting or producing biogas. Farm buildings are now often built for multi-purpose use, such as for animal sheltering, grain drying and storage, and machine storage. They may be much larger to allow additional flexibility and more space for more and larger farm machinery. Modern combines, for instance, need higher shed doors than their predecessors. And as smaller family farms are sold to large corporate farms, the operations need more machines to manage the additional acreage. These larger buildings often include innovative designs to maximize their use, such as climate-controlled offices, mezzanines for additional storage or workspace, and concrete slab floors with radiant floor heat. Some large-scale operations with a lot of machinery have a mechanics pit for easier access to equipment for maintenance and repair. Improved construction methods and building materials. New farm buildings are generally built to higher standards than in past generations. Improved engineering, design, and construction methods make them sturdier and able to withstand higher winds and heavier snow loading. Older post-frame buildings often have structural issues because of rotting posts. Round pole buildings using repurposed telephone poles are few and far between now, Bulow said. More often, the ones that are still around displaying this issue are the solid column buildings. The problem with the solid columns, either 6-inch or 8-inch, where you may see rotting, is that the wood treatment did not penetrate all the way to the interior of the column. This problem is usually seen in high moisture soils, situations where water runoff from the roof or surrounding terrain is not properly managed, or where it is in contact with animal waste. Newer post-frame buildings, however, are made from pre-engineered kits and use pressure-treated square or rectangular glulam or nail lam posts assembled from dimensional lumber that has had knots and other defects cut out. Their multi-ply structure makes the wood more consistent throughout and is resistant to cracking, splitting, twisting, and warping, and is dimensionally stable. In addition, these engineered wood posts are protected from rot by being pressure-treated, incorporating plastic sleeves around their base to create a barrier between wood and soil, or placing them on top of a concrete post for a permanent foundation. Some farm buildings use cold-framed steel, CFS, or structural steel framing, which is stronger than wood and is rot, mold, termite, and fire-resistant. Tension fabric buildings have evolved greatly as well over the years. According to Adam Laidlaw, project and design consultant for Legacy Building Solutions, legacybuildingsolutions.com, tension fabric buildings have come a long way from the hoop structures that were common in various agricultural applications. With the rigid frame, I-beam engineering concept that Legacy Building Solutions uses, a building design can be fully customized from the beginning for the customer's intended use. In addition, the coverings are very durable. PVC fabric is naturally corrosion resistant, making it a much better option than metal buildings for fertilizer storage and other corrosive environments, Laidlaw said. Legacy Building Solutions protects the building frame and other metal components with epoxy paint to completely seal off corrosive elements from impacting the structure. Advancements in building science have led to construction materials that are more durable and feature more options in colors, textures, and designs. This includes roofing, cladding, windows, entry doors, overhead doors, posts, trusses, ventilation, insulation, fasteners, adhesives, sealants, caulks, and finish materials such as coatings, paints, and stains. Conclusion: modern farm buildings look much different from those built in past generations because they are different. They have drastically improved in design, materials, construction methods, and in safety efficiency, ergonomics, and environmental considerations. With continuing research and development, these improvements are bound to continue, and we can only imagine what the next generation of farm buildings will feature. Sources: Burroughs Post Frame Supply, burroughssupply.com. Graber Post Buildings, Graber Post. Hickswood, hickswood.com. Legacy Building Solutions, legacybuildingsolutions.com. Lester Buildings, lesterbuildings.com. Permacolumn, permacolumn.com. Post Protector, postprotector.com. Starwood Rafters, starwoodrafters.com. Stockade Buildings, Stockade Buildings Inc. Wick Buildings, wickbuildings.com. Ion Safety, Make forklift safety a priority. Steps to preventing injuries on the job site. Authored by Combalift. A report released by OSHA, OSHA.org, estimates that 35,000 serious injuries and 62,000 non-serious injuries involving forklifts occur annually. Construction sites can be potentially dangerous due to the presence of substantial building materials as well as heavy-duty machinery. Choosing the right piece of material handling equipment for loads and facilities is a decision not to be made lightly. While there are several factors to take into consideration, such as effective and efficient handling, financial cost, and sustainability, safety should be a top priority on the list. To maintain a safe work environment, it's paramount to understand why these accidents happen, the factors that can contribute to them, and most importantly, how they can be prevented. Prevent rollovers and tipping incidents. According to OSHA's directives, the safest place for the driver to be is strapped into the seat with a seatbelt. This practice is crucial, as one of the most serious types of forklift accidents involves forklift rollovers or tipping incidents. To ensure this practice, a simple switch can be fitted under the seat with a sensor that detects whether the operator is seated and prevents the forklift from starting unless the seatbelt is fastened. Making this a standard feature in all forklifts could prevent serious injuries or even fatalities in case of a forklift rollover. Tipover can be prevented by following OSHA standards, which mandate keeping the load as close to the ground as possible during travel, as well as keeping the forklift mast fully in. Multi-directional forklift models, such as those built by Irish-based manufacturer Combalift, are designed to travel sideways while handling long loads such as timber panels. The sideways function eliminates the need for overhead carrying while navigating tight spaces, which significantly reduces the risk of injury. An additional safety feature is that these forklifts are built with a low center of gravity, allowing for a low-to-the-ground movement of a load. An integrated platform provides a stable base for resting the load during transportation. Other common causes of forklift tipping over include poorly balanced loads and overloading. It is of utmost importance for forklift operators to be aware of the type of load they are handling, its load center and overall weight, and the height it needs to be lifted. Equally important is their understanding of the type of forklift they are operating and its specific characteristics and load chart, as there might be different types of forklifts with different load capacities within the same facility. Avoid overloads. Fitting a forklift with an anti-overload device, such as the Combi Safe Lift, will enable operators to avoid the pitfalls of potential overloading, which can have serious consequences if it occurs. This simple and cost-effective system consists of a strain sensor on the mast section and a lift cutout valve on the hydraulic line to disable lifting if the unit is potentially overloaded. An audible alarm warns the operator of an overload situation, and a load moment indicator is fitted to the dashboard in the cab. The operator can instantly see from the green, amber, and red traffic light, signaling when there is a risk of overloading or when the forks are not fully engaged, for example, and take appropriate action. Improve visibility. Another reason why forklift accidents can occur is due to obstructed sight lines. Some common causes that can block the driver's line of sight include driving with elevated forks or carrying oversized loads, such as timber trusses and other materials found on construction sites. A sideways mode addresses this issue, as operators are able to transport long and oversized loads low to the ground, offering an exceptional view of potential dangers. To maximize visibility, they also feature a high-positioned offset driver cab, providing forklift drivers with an excellent vision of the load, forks, and surrounding areas, increasing safety and reducing the risk of accidents and product damage. This feature offers significant advantages compared to conventional forklifts, in which the cabin and driver's seat are positioned in the center and behind the mast, creating blind spots and obstructing the operator's visibility. Decrease operator stress and fatigue. OSHA reports that long work hours may increase the risk of injuries and accidents and can contribute to poor health and worker fatigue. These issues, which are particularly common in today's busy work environment, can lead to a further source of forklift accidents. While implementing shorter shifts or providing workers with more break time can be a solution, it is not always feasible and easy to achieve. As forklift drivers usually need to operate for extended periods, a more feasible solution is to prioritize their comfort and minimize strain to prevent fatigue. The elevated position of ergonomically designed cabs ensures that the driver's line of sight is not impeded. This, together with full suspension seats and intuitive and ergonomically positioned controls, can lead to an improvement in drivers' confidence and comfort, making for a stress-free in-cab environment. While it is paramount to always look in the direction of travel when driving a forklift, this can also contribute to driver strain, particularly when traveling in reverse. CombiLift's auto swivel seat automatically engages and swivels the seat and armrest 15 degrees to the right or left to accord with the direction of travel selected by the operator, significantly reducing driver strain. Increased training. Ensuring forklift safety is crucial in any workplace, particularly in construction sites where other heavy machinery is also used. Equally important is the implementation of more operator training and forklift operation procedures, which, according to OSHA, could reduce accidents by 70%. Adhering to OSHA directives and standards and selecting the material handling equipment best suited to the needs will ensure the safety and productivity of the workforce. CombiLift, CombiLift.com, is the largest manufacturer of multi-directional, side-loading, and articulated forklifts globally. It became the world's fastest-growing forklift manufacturer, exporting to more than 85 countries, with more than 85,000 trucks in use worldwide, delivering customization and adaptability to the diverse needs of every customer. In focus, collecting quality survey data. Gathering and analyzing survey responses accurately is critical to compiling useful construction data. Authored by Jacob Prater. People in fields such as economics, science, and politics often try to make predictions. Whether they're about market shifts, consumer demand, manufacturing capacity, or growth in new areas, those who can predict change accurately have an advantage. This applies to the construction industry, where businesses need to make major decisions based on survey responses. But the reports are only as good as the quality of the information gathered and its analysis. The validity of predictions is determined by how well the information is gathered and analyzed. Because good decisions are based on good information, collecting reliable, valid data is critically important. Reliability versus validity. The terms reliable and valid are related but refer to two different concepts. Reliable data refers to its reproducibility. In other words, it is data that, when measured repeatedly, produces a consistent result. Valid data, on the other hand, describes the result that was intended to be measured. The reliability of data and its validity are sometimes difficult to determine without other data to compare to, but there are some methods. Whether a researcher can make those comparisons or not, it is possible to collect good, useful data. Collecting good data using samples. Collecting good data requires some idea of the total group or population intended to predict from, and then capturing information from a smaller group or subset within it to get a snapshot of the whole. This is a representative sample that should be selected randomly. If a researcher wants to avoid bias, capturing a sample that is skewed toward or away from some demographic and thus not representative of the whole group or population, why not just get the whole population to respond? That would be ideal, but it is usually too difficult or expensive to accomplish. Avoiding bias and comparing with other samples. There are some classic examples of incorrect predictions based on biased sampling that illustrate how easy it is to make a mistake. For example, in 1936, Literary Digest incorrectly predicted that Roosevelt would lose the presidential election by inadvertently introducing a bias toward affluent Americans by sending out surveys based on vehicle registrations, among other things. These past mistakes show that researchers must be aware of how a sample can include known or unknown bias, so they proceed with caution. Comparison to other studies or surveys with different sampling groups and methodologies can help validate a dataset. Avoiding confirmation bias in surveys. One way to get a representative sample is through surveys. Survey data can be useful, but it must be kept in context. First, a survey will need to cast a wider net than the representative sample size because it is nearly impossible to get a 100% response rate. Second, those who do respond are often in groups that are either already favorable or have an axe to grind. Or perhaps all those who respond are interested, while those who are not interested don't respond. Third, the questions chosen and how those questions are worded is crucial, as respondents can interpret questions differently. Researchers can be tempted to ask questions that might confirm what they already think, rather than provide the information that is actually desired. This is known as confirmation bias. For these reasons, it is helpful to have an experienced, impartial third-party review a survey and its questions to help weed out poorly worded questions and design the survey so information is gathered in an unbiased process. If a disinterested third party isn't available to review a survey, researchers may instead use a few trusted sources and run a test survey before launching it on a large scale. Strategies for prompting a good survey response rate. How do researchers get a good response rate to a survey? This is challenging. They can certainly send out more surveys, but sometimes incentives help. Another tactic is to make the survey brief and easy to access and respond to. The downside is that the survey may not get the most useful information that way. Designing a survey to reach a highly engaged group is another strategy to produce a quality survey with a good response rate, but that data isn't necessarily reflective of an entire population. But then, that population may be those whose opinion matters the most to the researcher. Determining sample size. What is a representative sample size? This varies and is never easy to define without knowledge of the population. That might sound like a bit of a circular explanation, and it is, but let's start by defining what is not a good sample size. If there are 10,000 people in a population, but only 10 are surveyed, that won't produce good results. Surveying 500 is an improvement, but even more will lead to better data. A response rate of 5% to 30% is good, with more than 50% considered fantastic. A good survey should try to get the largest sample possible at a reasonable cost. If a survey reveals what a whole population thinks, then the researcher can interpolate what a few random samples of different sizes are likely to say and compare them to the population. From there, the researcher can determine the probability that a sample of a particular size will respond the same way as the population. When that probability is at a comfortable level, say 90 to 95%, then that's the sample size to use. That is, of course, in hindsight. If there isn't a history of population outcomes and sample responses, then it is best to just acquire the largest, most representative sample possible. That said, there are ways to check that the sample is at least consistent with itself. For example, let's say a survey was conducted with 1,000 responses received from a pool of 10,000 surveyed, and 500 random responses were analyzed to determine a specific response, such as agricultural market growth nationally and in the Midwest. This becomes the prediction, or model. The model can then be tested with random samplings of different sizes from the remaining 500 responses. This technique can be used to internally test the consistency of the data, which helps validate the results. A bonus is that the researcher can get a good idea of what a representative sample is if it produces responses with a 95% confidence level that are consistent with the model from the 500 responses that were excluded from the model at a particular sample size. Analyzing the data. Once data has been acquired, the researcher must take care to analyze it objectively. An interesting example of analysis without proper reflection, and perhaps incompletely done, is that of New Coke. In the mid-1980s, the Coca-Cola Company created a new formula and rebranding in response to external feedback from the heavily marketed Pepsi Challenge television ad campaign, as well as internal company taste tests. These blind taste tests suggested that people preferred a sweeter beverage more like Pepsi. New Coke was created in response, but it failed miserably, not because the taste testers were wrong, but because loyal Coca-Cola customers didn't want a different product. The importance of collecting demographic data. Survey researchers need to carefully determine what the data actually says, and equally important, what it doesn't say. For example, let's say a large group of contractors is surveyed and most responded that they were experiencing a significant increase in building contracts. This could mean that a lot of construction is taking place, but a closer examination might reveal that only smaller contractors were responding this way. This may indicate that the market conditions are very different for companies who primarily sell products to large commercial builders and contractors. This is why a superficial analysis that reports only how most survey takers have responded can lead to overgeneralization and assumptions that produce inaccurate results. Complex and sometimes seemingly contradictory data are known as confounding variables. Because of their confusing interrelationships and interactions, it can be challenging to isolate them. Therefore, it is important to analyze data as thoroughly as possible. A detailed analysis can be planned from the beginning of a survey by collecting basic demographic data about the respondents, such as contractor size or whether the contractor is residential or commercial. A simple way to do this is to look at survey responses in categories within the demographic data. For this example, it could involve analyzing the number of building contracts based on contractor size. If the demographic data isn't available, then this factor would remain hidden, and the data could be misinterpreted. Analyzing data both as a whole and by demographic category can prove useful, especially when the story isn't clear on first examination. Collecting demographic data in a survey could also help determine if the sample obtained is at least capturing the population one is hoping to predict. If a survey turns up only responses from predominantly commercial construction, but the researchers were trying to capture residential, agricultural, and industrial as well, then it is clear that the sampling was biased. If instead, a researcher can compare the demographic data to known demographic information from another unrelated study or survey, and the demographic information is similar, then there is a good chance the data is not biased, at least for those demographics. The challenge of conducting an unbiased survey. The final hurdle in researchers collecting good data is administering a survey well, that is, without bias. The challenge is in determining not only what is asked, but how it is asked, and drawing out, in a neutral manner, the intended information. This requires self-reflection and impartial communication. Self-reflection is difficult for some researchers because they need to be willing to hear opinions or information they may not like. They must put aside their own biases and reject emotional responses. To do this, questions need to be carefully crafted to avoid leading respondents to answer in a certain way. The risk of asking emotion-based questions. A study of some political surveys can be a masterclass in how to ask questions poorly. They sometimes present a simplistic question that appeals to emotion rather than intellect to get a desired response. This is an attempt to change a survey respondent's opinion rather than to try to determine their current opinion. The order in which questions are asked can also have an impact on the results of a survey. That's because previous questions can influence how a respondent answers later questions. The pros and cons of multimode surveys. The method or mode in which a researcher conducts a survey matters. Multimode surveys have been effective where initial contacts are made through a particular survey mode, such as by mail. All those who respond by mail are then taken off the survey list, and the remaining pool of non-respondents are sent an email. Some will respond to email and are then removed from the survey list. The remaining non-respondents might receive a phone call or text. Multimode response can be effective at driving up response rates, thus getting a better sample and better data, but shouldn't be used often, as it tends to make respondents feel pressured. A less aggressive version can begin with one mode and ask respondents to share their preferred response mode, which could be used for future surveys. If multimode is used, a researcher would be wise to check if responses are comparable by survey mode among demographic groups, while also evaluating whether there are greater response rates to certain modes among various demographic groups. The urge to use the simplest, fastest survey method that gets the most responses should be weighed carefully to avoid a bias toward the most accessible respondents. Conclusion: a well-crafted and properly administered survey with a response from an engaged group can produce good data. If the resulting data is analyzed carefully and impartially, it can produce accurate information that can be very helpful in making well-informed decisions. Spotlight on True Metal Supply. True Metal Supply is in the customer service industry. Metal roofing is their main product. Authored by Linda Schmid. Planting seeds, Adam Clark and Mason Burchett had worked in the metal industry for years when they decided to open their own metal shop in Knoxville, Tennessee in February 2022. They saw that the industry was underserved and thought they could be part of the solution. The partners were very intentional about the business they were building. They started with the name and spelled out what the company's shared values were to be. TRUE stands for trust, respect, uprightness, and excellence. In the beginning, it was rough. With only 3 employees, Clark, Burchett, and Blake Gibson were the manufacturing department, sales, delivery, etc. They did it all. While it was hard, it was also very fulfilling because they were building something that was truly theirs, heart and soul. Nurturing and growing. The company now has 26 employees, and they sell their products nationwide. Their biggest market niches are roofers, builders, and DIYers. They offer metal siding, building accessories, and pole barn kits. However, metal roofing comprises the vast majority of their sales. They have 3 profiles of standing seam and 3 through-fasten profiles, plus 7 metal shingle styles. Burchett likes to think that their success has largely been because of their early investment in marketing. They brought on a marketing manager, Shannon Clark, who has been a great help getting out the word about True Metal Supply. Nurturing and growing the company is synonymous with nurturing and growing their relationships with customers, vendors, and everyone they come in contact with. We strive to make each experience relational rather than transactional, Burchett said. We become friends with our customers. For instance, we had a contractor who was in a jam. He needed to move his materials from one location to another, so we moved them for him. These were materials he purchased elsewhere, but he needed help, so we helped him. He has been a valued customer ever since. According to Burchett, there have been employee challenges along the way, such as knowing when to hire. Hiring prematurely can put a strain on finances, while delaying too long places undue pressure on existing staff. Then there is the question of who to hire. We have an intentional culture here, so vetting people is important, Burchett said. Faith in Christ and his teachings drive us, so while people do not have to share our faith to work here, they do have to share our values. When both Burchett and Clark interview candidates, they grade them first based on GWC. This translates to, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? If they pass this test, then Burchett and Clark explain what TRUE stands for, and they gauge the candidate's sincerity based on their dedication to these principles. These values inform the keys to good business. People before profits. Treat people right in every interaction. Burchett says it is important to stay humble and remember that the opportunity to serve people has come from God, and it is a blessing. Moving into the future. The current business climate is very encouraging, Burchett said. People seem optimistic about the economy, and we expect an extended period of success for the metal industry over the next few years, he added. Along with the trend of moving toward metal exteriors, Burchett sees that people are excited about textured coatings and wood prints. True Metal Supply is focused on growing and helping their customers grow along with them. They look forward to expanding their manufacturing footprint and product lines through research and surveys to ensure that they are responsive to customers' needs. Clark and Burchett also wanted to extend their thanks to their employees who all work together to make it happen. Behind all the dedicated employees are families who have been very supportive, and both Adam and I are grateful, Burchett said. Business Focus, Barndominium Construction, Lending Common Questions and Answers. Authored by Dave Navrat. Builders regularly ask me if their customers can get financing for a barndominium construction project. The answer is yes. I am a nationwide barndominium construction lender who spends 100% of my workday providing customers with financing for the construction of the barndominium as well as for the permanent loan. I have been providing barndominium lending for many years. In this article, I provide answers to frequently asked questions regarding barndominium construction lending. Many of these answers will vary depending on the lender you choose. I will provide important information from my experience as well as insights I have gained from competitive lenders. You can use these questions and answers as a guideline for communication with the lender of your choice. What a loan can include. What is allowed to be included in a barndominium construction loan? This is an important question to ask your lender. Will the lender allow the construction loan to include the purchase of land? How do they handle any existing land loans? Are exterior items allowed to be included in the construction loan, such as detached buildings, installation of driveways, septic systems, drilling water wells, pulling power to the property, fencing, ponds, etc.? Will the bank allow specialty items such as solar panels and in-floor radiant heating systems? For my bank, the short answer is that the construction loan can include pretty much whatever it takes to get the customer's property in the desired condition. This includes the complete build of the home and may also include the purchase of land, installing such things as a driveway, water well, septic system, pulling power to the property, solar panels, fencing, and pond. Permissions and requirements. What are the permissions and requirements? There are 3 permissions that I am most often asked about that are important to your customers. Number 1, can I serve as the general contractor? Number 2, can I live on site? Number 3, can I do any of the work myself? I find it is not often lenders allow these 3 permissions, but some lenders will do so. With the exception of the state of Texas, some lenders may allow the customer to serve as general contractor, provided the customer confirms they have the skills and knowledge to do so. Many customers may want to live on site during the construction period in a recreation vehicle. As for doing any of the construction, many lenders require the complete building of the home to be done by professionals. A few lenders may allow the customer to do some work. For example, the bank may require all work up to and including the installation of interior walls, usually drywall, to be outsourced to professionals, but then allow the customer to do finish work such as painting walls, installing flooring, installing trim, and hanging fixtures and cabinets. Factors affecting eligibility. What are the eligibility requirements? Keep in mind that construction loans involve more risk than a home purchase loan. With a construction loan, the home is a work in process. Once it is a single-family owner-occupied home, however, the risk decreases significantly. As risk increases, eligibility requirements increase. Banks tend to look at 4 financial factors when determining eligibility and assessing risk. Number 1, bank balances. We often say that cash is king. Your customers will need to show sufficient funds to cover down payment and closing costs. It is helpful to have additional funds in checking, savings, and investment accounts, including retirement funds. Number 2, down payment. Banks will vary on the required down payment. I have seen as low as 15% for a barndominium construction loan. Some lenders will allow non-cash sources of down payment, such as equity in the land and equity in the current home, provided that your customer plans to sell the home prior to obtaining a permanent loan at the end of the construction period. Number 3, credit score. Lenders will vary on what they allow. I often hear a 700 credit score minimum for a construction loan. Number 4, debt-to-income ratio. For construction loans, it is common to also consider the permanent loan requirements, i.e. the loan your customer has at the end of the construction period that includes both interest and principal as part of the loan payment. The most common source of permanent loans is through Fannie Mae. I most often hear about a 43% debt-to-income requirement for construction loans. Simply take all monthly debt payments from all sources, such as auto loans, installment loans, credit card balances, student loans, alimony, child support, etc., and divide by the total monthly income from all sources. Some banks will exclude payments for the customer's current home, provided they plan to sell the home prior to obtaining a permanent loan. Common components of a loan. What are common components of a barndominium construction loan? For most lenders, it is common to have a construction loan period to build the barndominium, followed by a permanent loan. Construction loans are usually interest-only payments based on the average drawn balance for any given month. The loan amount is just an upper limit that cannot be exceeded. Many lenders will allow extensions, such as 90-day extensions at the end of the loan term for a minimal fee. Upon completion of the build, the goal for most customers is to get a permanent loan where the customer begins making principal and interest payments that may also include escrows for taxes and insurance. Permanent loan options vary among lenders. Building requirements and restrictions. What are the building requirements restrictions? Banks will vary on building requirements restrictions. The key is marketability. It is common for lenders to require certain minimum ratios for finished living area compared to unfinished living area, shop and garage space. It is common to require at least 60% finished living area under one roof. You can count finished basements and finished second stories. Porches, porticos, and any detached buildings are usually not considered in the ratio. It is also common for lenders to require the value of the home to be a certain percent of the value of the property. If the customer's land is valued at $600,000 and you are building a $300,000 home, it will appear to be more of a land loan than a barndominium construction loan. Information needed before contacting a lender. What should I have available before contacting a lender? It is helpful for your customers to have some land and build information ready prior to contacting a lender. For land, be prepared with the date acquired or to be acquired, the number of acres, the purchase price, if purchased within that last few years, estimated market value, and the loan balance, if any. For the build, you mainly need planned square feet by category, finished living area by floor, unfinished shop, garage/storage space, and covered porches space. The actual plans may change as your customer gathers cost information, but for the initial call with the lender, it is helpful to have approximate square foot numbers and a single number estimated budgeted cost for the entire build, including both the home and all improvements to the property. Conclusion: Barndominium construction lending is available nationwide. It is important to find a lender with barndominium construction experience. Your customers should be able to get competitive, similar loan terms to that of the more traditional stick-built homes. Dave Navrat is a barndominium construction loan officer at First Federal Bank of Kansas City. Dave has been working with builders and families to coordinate barndo loans for many years and has helped facilitate numerous barndominium construction loans across the United States. First Federal, FFBKC.com, is a bank dedicated to helping people build a better financial future. We empower customers with financial literacy, personal and business banking accounts, and lending options. On the job site, OSHA and ASTM standards for PPE, how to choose the right workwear for safety compliance. Authored by Nick Warwick. Industries like construction, manufacturing, and rural building are risky, and workplace accidents are often commonplace. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the construction sector alone accounts for over 46% of all fatal slips, trips, and falls. Given the high stakes, it's no wonder regulatory bodies like the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and the American Society for Testing and Materials, ASTM, provide essential safety guidelines. In part, those guidelines specify how workers should use personal protective equipment, PPE, and workwear. In addition to adhering to OSHA and ASTM guidelines, selecting a trustworthy PPE supplier can help you secure your workers' safety. American-made workwear is often known for its superior quality and durability, making it a wise investment for employers who need long-lasting PPE. Designed to meet rigorous standards, it provides consistent protection in unpredictable environments. This guide explains these standards with specifics on selecting the appropriate workwear to protect workers and meet compliance rules. What are OSHA standards for workwear? Established under the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, OSHA is a key player in establishing and maintaining safe and healthy workplaces. OSHA has checks and balances in place to prevent workplace illnesses, injuries, and fatalities. Toward that end, the agency ensures workers have the right PPE best suited to their work environments. Practical applications of OSHA standards. For industries like construction, where injury risks are higher, OSHA mandates certain types of PPE designed to protect workers from common workplace hazards. The PPE must not only be readily available, but must also meet or exceed the standards set by the American National Standards Institute. Depending on the job, PPE may include eye, face, head, hand, and foot protection, respiratory protection, head protection, electrical protective equipment, personal fall protection systems. OSHA also specifies guidelines for implementing PPE. Employers are responsible for conducting risk assessments, selecting the appropriate PPE for the job, ensuring employees abide by PPE requirements, and more. While the guidelines can be overwhelming, it's essential to comply with them to keep workers safe and avoid costly fines and other consequences. What is ASTM, and how does it differ from OSHA? While OSHA sets legally mandated requirements for workplace safety, including PPE, ASTM focuses on voluntary consensus standards. These standards specify performance criteria and testing methods for materials used in PPE, including the physical, mechanical, and chemical makeup of fabrics, fibers, and textiles. With ASTM, there are clear standards for testing and evaluating textiles. From wool, cotton, and other natural fibers to synthetic materials like glass strands, each type of material should meet performance and safety requirements. This rigorous process ensures that PPE can perform optimally in hazardous situations, whether a fire, chemical exposure, or a low-visibility environment. While following ASTM protocols may be voluntary, doing so can help employers provide the safest possible working environment for employees. Knowing how PPE performs in real-world scenarios enables employers to choose the most appropriate PPE for each role, from construction workers using heavy equipment to rural builders exposed to unpredictable weather conditions. How OSHA and ASTM complement each other. OSHA regulations focus on ensuring that employers provide the necessary PPE to protect workers from potential hazards. However, OSHA does not typically detail the performance requirements for specific protective gear. In contrast, ASTM standards aim to put PPE to the test, like a crash test for a vehicle. After all, providing PPE isn't just about checking off a box for compliance. It's about shielding workers from the dangers they encounter every day on the job. When you know how PPE holds up against flames, chemicals, electrical hazards, and other threats, you can equip workers with workwear designed to withstand the specific demands of each environment. Additionally, adhering to both OSHA and ASTM standards will give you greater peace of mind, knowing your workers have a complete line of defense against a wide range of risks. Ultimately, you'll ensure the PPE will perform effectively under stress, safeguarding employees in even the most dangerous conditions. Choosing the right workwear for safety compliance. Selecting the right workwear for your crew should start with a detailed workplace risk assessment. Identifying potential hazards will help you determine what type of protective clothing your workers need. Choosing appropriate workwear materials. Use your risk assessment to determine the right materials for your PPE, such as flame-resistant, moisture-wicking, or chemical-resistant fabrics. You can look to various ASTM standards to identify the most appropriate PPE for various situations. For example, ASTM F903-24 tests how well materials resist liquids, ensuring proper fit and comfort. Consider durability, breathability, and tear resistance too. Although personal protection is the primary goal, you'll want your workers to be comfortable on the job. Workwear that fits well and doesn't restrict movement will help your workers move freely and avoid getting injured. Regular maintenance and inspection. Your safety compliance tasks don't end with purchasing the right workwear. OSHA mandates regular inspections of PPE and replacement of any damaged or worn PPE. With proper care and maintenance, you can extend the life of workwear while offering protection and meeting safety standards. Why American-made workwear is a smart choice for safety compliance. Whether you need flame-resistant workwear or high-visibility clothing, familiarizing yourself with safety standards and committing to regular inspections will help you keep your crew safe. With American-made workwear, You get the added benefit of reliability, durability, and a commitment to ethical manufacturing that meets the highest safety standards. The Science of Building, Understanding Our Values. How Structural Elements and Building Codes Relate to Insulation Effectiveness. Authored by Dan Brownell. The importance of insulating buildings correctly can't be overstated, given high energy costs and the stringent building codes that regulate insulation. A key element in completing an insulation job properly is understanding R values and how they relate to aspects such as U factors, building codes, energy codes, climate zones, building envelope components, insulation types, proper installation techniques, thermal bridging, air infiltration, and documentation and verification of code adherence. The relationship between R values and U factors. R values are a measure of resistance of heat flow and are used to indicate the effectiveness of individual insulation products. U factors, on the other hand, are more general in that they measure the overall heat transfer through entire building component assemblies, including windows, doors, skylights, and structural elements. David Tomczak, Director of Marketing for Bay Insulation Systems, bayinsulation.com, summarized it this way. R value relates to specific insulation products, while U factor relates to insulation assemblies. R values are generally more familiar and better understood, in part because they're more intuitive. That's because their ratings correlate more logically with their performance. R value ratings increase as insulation effectiveness increases, whereas U factor can be confusing because rating numbers decrease as the insulation performance of the building component assemblies increase. This means R values are better than U factors for marketing purposes. According to Green Building Advisor's web article, Understanding R Value, prior to 1945, the insulation industry relied on U factors, but eventually replaced them with R values to boost sales. The article states that because many people assume that high numbers on a scale are better than sparse numbers, insulation manufacturers found it hard to market insulation by bragging about low U factors. So the R value, which is simply the inverse of U factor, was proposed by Everett Schuman, the director of Penn State's Building Research Institute. Since R equals 1U, the higher the R value, the better the insulation. greenbuildingadvisor.com/article, Understanding R Value. As previously mentioned, R values only measure insulation materials of individual components and not entire structural assemblies, which include areas with less insulation, such as windows, doors, skylights, and service openings for wires and pipes, etc. R values also don't account for thermal bridging. Thermal bridging occurs when components such as wood 2x4 into wall studs create a break in interior insulation. The break allows the wood, which has a much lower R value than the insulation around it, to conduct heat between the interior and exterior of the building. A similar effect takes place with air infiltration, caused by any openings in the building envelope, such as gaps in insulation around conduits or other materials passing through exterior walls. The limited scope of R values mean that they don't provide an overall measure of a structure's insulation. Even if maximum insulation is used and it's installed perfectly, the areas that aren't covered by insulation can still leak a tremendous amount of heat, much like leaving a car window open while the heater is on. That's why U factors are also important. They measure the effectiveness of a building's insulation system as a whole. Factors affecting insulation. Climate zones. The IRC and IECC use a map of the U.S. designating 8 zones with R value requirements. Colder climates require higher R values, while warmer climates require lower R values. Energy codes and green building programs. ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, a private, non-government organization, publishes energy standards for buildings that aren't mandatory on their own, but have been adopted as code by some state and local governments. Energy Star, or Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, LEED, certification programs sometimes recommend or require higher than minimum R values. Typically, to determine what insulation is required, Tomczak explained, the factors you need to consider are climate zone and what the local and/or state municipalities have adopted as code, including the year. Most locales use either the ASHRAE 90.1 standard or the IECC. However, the locale will state the year of the code or standard they've adopted. Both ASHRAE 90.1 and the IECC publish a new standard every 3 years. However, they don't do it concurrently or communicate directly with each other. They are two different bodies. Therefore, it is important to understand what may have changed from IECC 2012 to IECC 2015 to IECC 2018 to IECC 2021 to IECC 2024, or from ASHRAE 90.1 2013 to ASHRAE 90.1 2016 to ASHRAE 90.1 2019 to ASHRAE 90.1 22, etc. Building envelope components. Building codes not only vary by climate zone, but also for various parts of the building envelope, such as attics, exterior walls, ceilings, floors, basements, and crawl spaces. For example, a floor in climate zone 1 might require R13, while the same floor in climate zone 7 and 8 might require R38. Insulation types and installation. To understand your insulation needs, Tomczak said, you'll need to know what you're insulating, the climate zone, and the code or standard adopted by the local jurisdictions. From there, the code or standard adopted will specify what U factor you'll need to comply with. From there, the code or standard will provide a list of acceptable types of insulation assemblies with various combinations of R values, etc. There are two main types of insulation, thermal and reflective. Both reduce heat transfer, but in different ways. Thermal insulation, such as fiberglass batting, reduces heat transfer primarily through conduction and convection, whereas reflective insulation reduces heat transfer by reflecting radiant heat. David Yarbrough at Randy Services, Inc., a consultant for Reflective Insulation Manufacturers Association International, RIMI, explained, reflective insulations, RIs, and assemblies have thermal resistance, R values, like all insulation products used in buildings. Reflective insulation performance is based on a significant reduction in heat transfer by thermal radiation, one of the three modes of heat transfer. The important physical properties for RIs are low emittance. Low emittance means a surface gives off very little heat, and high reflectance. High reflectance means a surface rejects incoming heat. RIs are installed in enclosed regions to form one or more enclosed reflective air spaces. The type of insulation affects the method of installation, as its effectiveness and susceptibility to compromise or failure is affected by the specific material and its characteristics. For example, spray foam is applied as a thick liquid that's resistant to compression after it dries to a solid, but it must be applied at a consistent predetermined thickness to meet code. Fiberglass, on the other hand, is manufactured with a consistent thickness but is soft and pliable, making it susceptible to compression, which reduces its effectiveness. Both spray foam and fiberglass are susceptible to gaps in installation, which could prevent them from meeting code. Documentation and verification. Tomczak said, most reputable insulation suppliers and manufacturers will have a third-party laboratory mark on its product label that certifies the R value. As an example, for fiberglass insulation, one of the most commonly seen marks is Home Innovation Research Labs, homeinnovation.com/services certification. Tomczak elaborated on the requirements for documentation and verification with this excerpt from IECC, Chapter 3, Section C303, C303.11, Building Thermal Envelope Insulation. An R value identification mark shall be applied by the manufacturer to each piece of building thermal envelope insulation, 12 inches, 305 millimeters, or greater in width. Alternatively, the insulation installer shall provide a certification listing the type, manufacturer, and R value of insulation installed in each element of the building thermal envelope. For blown-in or sprayed fiberglass and cellulose insulation, the initial installed thickness, settled R value, installed density, coverage area, and number of bags installed shall be listed on the certification. For sprayed polyurethane foam (SPF) insulation, the installed thickness of the areas covered and R value of installed thickness shall be listed on the certification. For insulated siding, the R value shall be labeled on the product's package and shall be listed on the certification. The insulation installer shall sign, date, and post the certification in a conspicuous location on the job site. Conclusion: insulation building and energy codes, driven by financial, political, and environmental pressures, are becoming more stringent by the year. But as Tomczak pointed out, Not all new energy codes are universally authoritative. Just because new energy codes are established, it doesn't automatically mean that they must be followed, he said. It is the local and state jurisdictions that decide what to adopt, being code or standard, and applicable date of that code or standard. Builders need to remain up to date with changes in insulation materials and their local and state codes to stay compliant and competitive in their business. Sidebar: Test standards for certifying R values. According to Tom Chak, the ASTM C518 standard test method for steady-state thermal transmission properties by means of the heat flow meter apparatus is the generally accepted test used for R value, as well as ASTM C77 standard test method for steady-state heat flux measurements and thermal transmission properties by means of the guarded hot plate apparatus. However, this won't necessarily be shown on any product label. It most likely would be found in the manufacturer's data sheets for their products. The R value on the label should be backed or certified by a third-party independent lab, with that lab's mark on the label as well. Home Innovation Research Labs is just one example. homeinnovation.com says/certification/labs or certified products. The ASTM C518 test involves placing an insulation sample between a cold plate and a hot plate in a specially designed and calibrated testing machine. Detailed information about the test can be found on the ASTM.org website at astm.org/standards C518. According to the information published on the webpage, the test adheres includes the following methods and criteria in the Scope section of the test standard document. 1.4. The heat flow meter apparatus establishes steady-state one-dimensional heat flux through a test specimen between two parallel plates at constant but different temperatures. By appropriate calibration of the heat flux transducer with calibration standards and by measurement of the plate temperatures and plate separation. Porosity rate plus 7%. Fourier's law of heat conduction is used to calculate thermal conductivity and thermal resistivity or thermal resistance and thermal conductance. 1.6. This test method is applicable to the measurement of thermal transmission through a wide range of specimen properties and environmental conditions. The method has been used at ambient conditions of 10 to 40 degrees Celsius, with thicknesses up to approximately 250 millimeters, and with plate temperatures from -195 degrees Celsius at 25 millimeter thickness. 1.8. To meet the requirements of this test method, the thermal resistance of the test specimen shall be greater than 0.10 mikeroweWorks in the direction of the heat flow, and edge heat losses shall be controlled using edge insulation or a guard heater, or both. Resources: Bay Insulation Systems, bayinsulation.com. Northwestern Ohio Foam Products, Inc., NOFP, nofp.com. Reflective Insulation Manufacturers Association International, rhymeinternational.org. thermaldesign.com. Flashback. 2001. Time to Go Forward with Design Build. Authored by Jeffrey L. Beard, President and CEO, Design Build Institute of America. Interest in and use of Design Build method of project delivery is growing dramatically. Today, Design Build is the project delivery method of choice on more than 30% of the non-residential construction projects in the United States. Since 1985, the use of Design Build has grown substantially, particularly in the private sector, and is being used in a wide array of commercial and institutional applications, including hospitals, educational facilities, office buildings, retail centers, and hotels. Design Build is a process that was applied as early as 1800 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, when the Code of Hammurabi assigned master builders with absolute responsibility for both design and construction. Today, we are seeing a resurgence in the use of design build as owners and today's master builders strive to deliver capital facilities which serve as bottom-line assets in an ever-increasing competitive marketplace. Historically, master builders readily accepted the duty of serving as architect, engineer, and builder, assuming responsibility for every aspect of the project and commanding the services of multitudes of skilled craftsmen. Many of the great buildings of ancient Greece, such as the Parthenon and the Theater of Dionysius, stand today as monuments to the hard work and talent of the early builders, as well as the viability of the single-source design-build approach. With time, however, the responsibilities for design and construction began to separate, particularly in the United States. While single-source responsibility was used in the United States for many petrochemical facilities in the mid-1900s, the real resurgence of interest in design build within America has occurred primarily over the last decade. What is a project delivery method? The answer is a comprehensive process including planning, design, construction, and other services necessary for organizing, executing, and completing a building or other project. Examples of project delivery systems for capital facilities include the traditional design, bid, build approach, in which the project owner commissions an architect or engineer to prepare drawings and specifications under a design contract, and subsequently selects a construction contractor by competitive bidding or negotiation to build the facility under a construction contract. Another system is the construction management method, in which an owner engages an architect-engineer, AE, for design and a construction manager to coordinate the delivery process. The contracts for such ancillary consulting or subcontractor services can either be with the construction manager or directly with the owner. Another project delivery method, the design-build method, occurs when one entity, design builder, forges a single contract with the owner to provide architectural, engineering design services and construction services. Design build is also known as design construct and single source responsibility. There are many benefits with the use of the design build method of project delivery, including these: singular responsibility, quality, cost savings, time savings, potential for reduced administrative burden, earlier guaranteed cost, improved risk management. What's the key in successfully accomplishing design build, and how can it be advanced? The answer to this question is, first and foremost, focus on the owners. These words of advice from the Design Build Institute of America's fifth chairman of the board, Don Warren, president of Suit Construction Company, were given to DBIA's members and staff at the organization's first meeting in 1993 and continue to guide not only DBIA's operations today, but those of many successful design builders, no matter how large or small they are. This focus on the total need of the facility owner continues to distinguish DBIA members from their competitors, most of whom concentrate on their core competency, which is dictated by their learned profession or trade. By contrast, DBIA members typically have always had an eye on the external exigencies of meeting the marketplace, on understanding the owner's business drivers, and delivering the most efficient solution. Going forward, an aspiring competitor in the design-build marketplace needs to assess what that firm has already done for its customers and then determine how the organization can add further value for the customer. Through strong leadership of Rick Kuneth, CEO of Pankow Builders Ltd., DBIA's second chairman, DBIA created and published the Design Build Manual of Practice. This flagship publication has an entire section devoted to owners' design-build project implementation guidelines. Similarly, DBIA started an owners' on-site training program through the leadership and encouragement of 2001 Vice Chairman Mark Shambaugh, president of Shambaugh & Son. The first owners on-site was provided to Eli Lilly and Company, and the program has since been reprised for many other project owners of varying sizes. A DBIA survey of owners' needs during the mid-1990s revealed a number of products and services that owners recognized as the tools needed to properly implement design-build programs. Among those tools were a family of multidisciplinary design-build contracts, studies revealing the statistical advantages of design-build delivery, a master guide performance specification system, and increased educational programming. These tools are available within the industry. Going forward, some others that should be developed for design builders of all sizes include Programming Performance Specifying Template, a tool that will allow the synthesis of owner-user requirements to build a design-build RFP or project manual, and that will allow a feedback loop that tests the project results for fitness for purpose. Integrated Insurance Product, an insurance product that comprehensively takes into consideration a design-build entity's risks and exposures and realistically insures against potential losses. Guidance and Risk Identification and Pricing, an examination of potential risks on a design-build project that will provide a starting point for both owners and design builders to properly ascertain, value, and assign risk and responsibility to attain the most efficient and fair contracts. Technology benchmarking, asking owners and designer builders to look at the utility of their technology investments and to find ways to link and integrate hardware, software, and data systems for the betterment of the integrated process. Multidisciplinary design-build curriculum, describing in a living document the courses, training, and competencies needed for tomorrow's designer builder, including professional design, construction management, business, and related core topics. Performance codes and standards, reaching out to the building and zoning code community to align owners' development needs with concerns of safety officials and meaningfully participating in the development of national and international design, construction, and operating performance standards. With the development of these tools, design-build practitioners and owners can focus on the successful development of projects via the design-build method of project delivery. For 50-plus years, Rural Builder has been providing the news, trends, and resources builders need. Prior to the January 1974 edition, Farm Building News, as it was called, was in newspaper form. However, those old papers are not to be found in our Shield Wall library. We would love to see some of them. It's our lost heritage. If you have some of them, please drop a line to me, dan@shieldwallmedia.com. We'll publish a brief news story about you, your organization, and your projects in return. Project of the Month, Dairy Barn Event Space, Hickswood, hickswood.com, authored by the Rural Builder staff. In July 2021, the Simballs, a Wisconsin dairy farming family, lost their nearly 100-year-old barn to a fire. While no one was hurt, they decided to get out of the dairy business and only raise crops. After giving some thought to what they could do with the barn foundation, they decided to rebuild the structure as an event space. The beautifully restored structure combines the elegant lines of a traditional dairy barn with modern steel roof and walls, windows, and doors, making it a functional yet eye-catching example of an iconic farm building. Because of the location's stunning vistas, they named the facility Simballs Sunset View. The details: size 32 by 124 inch, trusses, starwood rafters, Fordant laminated walls, cement block, roof panels, shingles, Hickswood steel, residential 6 inch, 28 GA, black wall panel siding, Hickswood steel, Super Rib 60-29 white walk doors, Plico windows, Silverline. CSI Construction Survey Insights, a Shield Wall media builder trend. More builders go from big to small than from small to big. Authored by the Rural Builder staff. One of the trends that crosses our magazine titles is small contractors trying to do what they need to be successful. That often includes multiple types of construction. The industry data shows some interesting trends. One is that it appears easier to migrate from larger buildings or general construction to smaller buildings and sheds than the other way. Some examples. Of respondents listing post-frame as their primary business, 32% built sheds. Of respondents listing cold-formed metal buildings as their primary business, 29% built sheds. Of respondents listing pre-engineered metal buildings as their primary business, 23% built sheds. Of respondents listing general roofing as their primary business, 12% built sheds. Conversely, of respondents listing sheds as their primary business, 11% built post-frame, 0% built cold-formed metal buildings, 0% built pre-engineered metal buildings, 0% did general roofing. The one construction method that bucks the trend is wood-framed, stick-built construction. 16% of respondents listing wood-framed as their primary business built sheds. 33% of respondents listing sheds as their primary business built wood-framed. It will be interesting to watch how these trends develop over time with the increasing market share and new applications for post-frame and cold-formed metal construction.